we have this problem, which is the analysis of lines in space, comparable to lines on paper or lines in a graphic situation, but one learns so much by making the line move in and out of space. To begin with, they start out with getting acquainted with how many possible lines there are and how many curves and the types of curves and how they relate to each other. We give those as a purely arbitrary number of 8 curves because we have to start somewhere to cover the whole group of what's possible. Naturally, there are more than 8 curves, but they would consist of stages between any 2 of those. It's like the 8 stations in color: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. And so we arbitrarily select 8 curves which are as different from each other as possible. And we work with those for a long while until a student gets familiar with those. Like in color, you know, you work with the primary colors before you start combining them and doing all sorts of interesting relationships that are possible. So then the problem is to make these lines move in and out of space to the maximum, to make them look equally well from all directions, and to develop tensions between what we refer to as the accents of the curves. That's a point of greatest expansion. For instance, this would be the accent here, because it seems to project that way. This would be the accent of this curve, because that's where it appears to be expanding, and so on. But I think these are nice examples. They seem quite three-dimensional, and they turn very well. This is a nice view of this one. And so we have broken that down. The elements of design with which they're all familiar are line, plane, volume, value, texture, and color, all to be manipulated in space. So in the foundation year, we take each one of these elements separately and develop it in depth, and then in the later, more complicated problems, we combine them. But in the three-dimensional course, we handle the volume first because that's simpler and easier to talk about. Actually, the line is much more subtle and difficult to understand than this. So we have the rectilinear volumes, the curvilinear volumes, a combination of rectilinear and curvilinear volumes. And we go to the fragmented shapes, of which those are examples. Those are examples of 1 or 2 whole volumes, such as this, or this, or this, cut apart so that the pieces that you fragment are more beautiful and more interesting than the original. If you fragment a rectilinear volume and the pieces that you get are not better than the volume, why do it? So that's one problem. And another requirement is that you use every single piece. No piece is discarded, which gives the problem a certain unity right then and there. But it's really a very difficult and subtle problem, as anyone will testify who's been through it. But one that's so fascinating and has so many implications and so many possibilities, and it can be developed in so many different ways. We have literally hundreds of interpretations of that problem. And it's so practical because it's so applicable to all kinds of design. one day a man came from Westinghouse who happened to be acquainted with Donald Donor, not really Alexander. And he was kind of vague, and he said, well, you know, we have something out there at the plant, there's a Westinghouse plant in Pittsburgh, that we don't quite know what to do with. It's a new material, and we think maybe we need an artist. That's how the whole So he asked Donor to come out and look at the material. And they went out there, and at the plant they saw these big, huge, rolling steel rollers, and this rather, about this color, innocuous, uninteresting sheet material coming off of it, you know, and this was what they had, and they were confused and puzzled. They thought it was so easy to make it, they had so much of it, why not make a little money? So Donor said, well, let's color it. Donor was very fond of primary colors, and it was fine. So they colored it some beautiful deep reds and yellows and blues, sort of Mondrian-like colors, and that, of course, immediately made it more appealing. And Donor was just playing it by ear, and he said, all right, let's spin it. So they spun some trays to begin with, and they had these really beautiful contemporary trays that anyone would be delighted to buy. And then they made the trays a little deeper, and they had a few bowls, and they went on to a few more simple shapes, and they had something. And Alexander heard this story, and he was fascinated. He thought that this really was a great thing for design, and for, you see, Pittsburgh was a very industrial city, and they could do anything. They had all the equipment, they had all the most contemporary material, industrial equipment. So Alexander had observed that most of the students at Carnegie Tech went through the most talented ones went through the fine arts department. That was supposed to be the thing that you did if you had talent. If not, well, you went into advertising or some other lowly form of art. And, so he saw these students that he knew were talented, who would get out of Carnegie Tech, and the only place they could go was an advertising office, and they were started out doing paste ups, and they very seldom got any further. There was really no challenge, there was nothing exciting, nothing stimulating for them to do. And Alexander saw in this little incident, he had read a little bit, it was just beginning to be a little bit of publicity about these design offices like the big three we were talking about, and he had read a little bit of the Bauhaus, but the Bauhaus wasn't really industrial design because it wasn't industry, it wasn't mass production. And everyone, so many people have accused him of being unduly influenced by the Bauhaus. He knew very little about the Bauhaus, only a few casual, small books of photographs that he had seen. But this did seem to be a really wonderful thing. So he went to the president of Carnegie Tech, and he said, Dr. Baker, I think we should open an industrial design department, and this is a place to open it, and there isn't one in this country. And he proceeded to tell him what he thought were the possibilities, and as you all know, he was pretty persuasive. And so the president said, all right, we'll do it. Do you want to head it? And Alexander was at that time so involved with painting that he said, no, I don't think so. Let's give it to Donor, and I'll help. But he's the one to do it. So they did give it to Donor, and Donor had it for a couple of years. And then somehow he was invited to Pratt. Maybe they had heard about this going on there. And Donor came and taught here for a year. But it was just a little one man. You can't do it alone. They had no department. They would like to have had one, but and that was a good beginning. So Donor came to see us that summer, and he said, I want you and Rowena to come, and I'd just like for this to be for the record, because Alexander didn't bring me in like nepotism. And, I'd like for you to come and help me. I can't do it alone. Well, of course, no one could do it alone. So we had an interview with Boudreau, who was then the dean of the art school, and we were both invited to come. And we did, and that was the year that, the first year Alexander was there, that he organized the foundation year. So it was really fun, and Alexander invited a number of his former students, like Coley and Rigby and Whiteman, and that's how they came to there. We had a group, and we started, and Alexander held actual sessions for the first year, for a whole year. we all had our separate areas of expertise, but he wanted to blend it together, and he wanted to get the curriculum unified so that everyone was teaching the same thing at the same time, in the same way. So that's what happened, and at the end of the year we had a little show. I guess New York must have been smaller then because we were invited to have a show at Rockefeller Center. Maybe there weren't so many schools. But we did, and it was pretty dramatic, and we got all the right kind of publicity, and it was a lot of fun. So we had it made. But the teachers at Pratt had made our lives so miserable that Alexander went to the dean and said, I don't think I want to stay here. I'd like to go back to Pittsburgh. I can't take it. You know what political pressure can be. And but to give Mr. Woodrow credit, he was really interested and impressed. He said, no, don't go back. I will stand behind you. You stay and you keep going and do what you're doing. So that's how it happened. So we did, and we worked. Alexander continued to teach painting in the department, and I taught in the foundation year, and I also taught one or two rather simple sculptural, as much as I could do with what they had, problems. And then we started to build it from the first year to the second year. We couldn't build the second year till we had established the first year, and the third year, and the fourth year. And I had a marvelous experience. I taught in all 4 years at that time. And it began to grow, and you all know the rest of the history. But that's just how it started from those. Isn't it funny sometimes from a chance beginning? If Alexander hadn't heard that story about Westinghouse, I don't think he would have ever had the...
What was the material?
Oh, the material that covers all of our houses and all of our lives. They called it at that time micarta,
right.
Formica.
Yes, well,
now I suppose it has several different names.